So you're a beginner dungeon master, games master of TTRPG. You've ended up maybe running your first session, maybe your session 0, maybe even a few sessions, or maybe you're a fully experienced dungeon master, and you end up having the situation come up. You think that you're running an absolutely incredible game. It's dark, gritty, real, and it has some really cool, impactful moments, but then at some point it seems that your players look a bit uncomfortable, a bit squeamish. Oh no, that's not great. What happened? Well, what probably happened was the case that you may have accidentally ended up stumbling onto a subject that your players were uncomfortable with. Doesn't happen all of the time, but it does occasionally happen, especially if you don't implement the correct safety tools earlier on in your games. Now, don't worry, have no fear, it is recoverable, but it's good if you at least know some useful, handy tips on how to make sure you avoid those awkward moments in your games. Hence why this video, where we'll be able to end up discussing just some handy things to really just make sure that you and your players are having the most possible fun in your games, because that's why we're all here, that's why you're here, it's why they're here. So let's get to it. Now, one of the comments in my comment section of a video ended up putting the term absolutely beautifully, and I really like this, because I've been using these but haven't really had the terminology, which is lines and veils and stars and wishes. We'll go over those all individually, starting off with lines. Now, lines, fairly explanatory. Hard lines. These are concepts that come up in storytelling that can really sometimes trigger a person. This could be because of the case that the world is really real and really dark at times, or it could be just the fact that it's a thing like a phobia. Spiders, the fear of drowning, situations like that, not great, and sometimes being discussed in depth at a table setting can actually trigger some people. So try to avoid those if possible, or at minimum, figure out what phobias your players have by discussing it with them, so that way then you can write it down and try to avoid it going forwards in the future. And then there are concepts that frankly most tables would agree shouldn't really be coming up in our stories. Now, this is stuff that I do recommend you talk to your players about as early as physically possible to make sure that you understand what audience you are dealing with, so that you can end up talking about these subjects, or at least making sure to avoid these subjects going on in your storytelling. This is stuff which frankly YouTube ends up having a problem being discussed, but simply put, I'm going to have to end up mentioning it so that way then you can actually avoid it going forwards in the future. Now, the main thing being the case of things such as violence, maybe of a graphic or sexual nature, harm to innocents, things like children, animals, really just torture as well, are all subjects that can make people feel uncomfortable. It sounds obvious, but sometimes it's good to end up being reminded of this. And so it's important to discuss with your players to figure out what they are okay with and what they aren't okay with. It is probably good to presume that most tables that you'll set are not really comfortable with that sort of thing going on, and certainly not in graphic detail. And really, a lot of the time, you don't really want to have that sort of come up. It's really good to establish those boundaries, and if you can establish it, the earlier the better, so that way then you don't get blindsided by this type of stuff going on in the future. However, while the best time to start was yesterday, it's always good to start today instead. And then we get into something a bit easier, which is veils. Now, veils are essentially stuff that we would consider the fade to black. The stuff that goes on in our games perfectly fine, but you know, we don't need to end up knowing about it in detail. Whether this being stuff like romance, graphic violence. Now, I mentioned the violence in the previous one, it's because there is a limit. There are distinct levels of violence that go on in games and media. Essentially a case of a person breaks a finger. Okay, not bad. A person breaks a finger because they're being tied down, waterboarded, and all of the other stuff that goes on in torture. Yeah, I don't need to hear about that. I just had, like, you know, a snack. I'm like 3 Monster cans in, and hearing about this stuff it's not pleasant. I understand what's going on. The character is bad. We do need that information. But I don't want to have to end up hearing about it in great detail. And if you're forcing your players to end up sitting through an actual torture of a character in one of your stories, unless they are the type of people who end up actually enjoying that type of stuff, just avoid it. It's a lot easier to have that type of stuff go off screen. A classic Fade to Black is perfect for these scenarios, or having it going on behind closed doors, and you can end up working that into your storytelling, being the case that, hey, yes, maybe your characters are avoiding things like torture, but they are sending characters to get tortured quite a bit. That's a whole plot line that you could end up working into your games. So that's what veils are. They're concepts that come up in storytelling a lot, which are perfectly fine to be around, just don't go into detail. Like, violence is fine. Yes, a person ends up getting their arm chopped off while in the middle of a fight. That's okay. We don't need an actual medical diagram of what's going on and how much pain they are doing, and we don't need all of the scream. Yeah, classic scream goes on, that's fine. We don't need it to go on for multiple turns. But after those heavy concepts, let's end up moving into something a bit more positive, shall we? Being stars. Now, stars are great because this is perfect for beginner DMs, because it really highlights literally to you as a games master what were the moments that your players enjoyed. Stars are standout moments. Specifically, you ask your players, what did they enjoy most? What stood out? What is the star of that game? Was it a character? Was it a type of gameplay mechanic that got thrown in? Was it a plot line? Stars are really great because it's probably the easiest to end up getting immediate feedback from in the middle of your games. And it's very easy to implement these going forwards, because instead of having to avoid anything, you're like, okay, people really love this, let's bring it in. The main thing for that one, just don't bring it in too much, get what I mean? Which also leads into wishes. Wishes are obviously also kind of obvious now that we know what stars are. Wishes are what do our players want to have happen more in the future. These are things where you end up talking to your players and figuring out, hey, what do you want to have happen in this story? Is this game not having enough spooky stuff? Maybe your players want some spooks going on. Maybe they want to end up getting creeped out, stuff like that. Or maybe they're like, hey, you know what? We're a pirate campaign, but we've mostly been stuck on Treasure Island for the last 15 sessions. Could we actually get to the ocean? Like, it's really checking in with your players, figuring out, hey, what could we do more to make this a more fun experience for you? Get everyone's opinion into it, and really just try to build it all around for everyone at your table to get what they want, and for you as a DM to get what they want. Because hey, yes, your player wants that fancy sword, they need it for that really cool build that they want to end up running. However, they're only level 3. You want this really awesome flying, fire-dealing, psychic companion sword. You gotta work for it, and that's where then it's a bit of a give and take. Don't make it mean. Don't end up being like, you want this really cool thing, well, you're going to have to do some dark stuff, buddy. No, just have it being as like, okay, that's really cool. You're going to have moments in the game where it's going to be difficult and it is going to be challenging, but that's the reward for it. You have an incentive for your players to want to do the best, both in terms of gameplay and storytelling, if there is a legitimate reward in-game for them to end up feeling like they got something out of it. But now, unfortunately, back to the dark stuff. So, say we've ended up having a situation come up in our games where maybe things have ended up going a little bit too far. Our players are feeling a little bit uncomfortable and they need some way to notify you that, hey, I need a minute. Well, that's what the X card is for. Now, an X card isn't actually a literal card, which they end up holding up with an X. It can be if your players are fine with that, but a lot of the time these are going to be mannerisms or little flags, essentially, that our players can raise to basically just say, hey, can we even move this story along? Because, yeah, they're not feeling it. And it can be really simple. It could be potentially that they just tap the table. It could be instead that they send you a physical text message. Maybe they actually raise their hand or ask or say pause. There's lots of different times where in our games where you might not even know it, but they're just feeling a bit uncomfortable and you need to shift that scene relatively quickly. That way then they have a clear way of communicating to you that they aren't feeling it and they would like to be taken out of it quickly, and it's a nice clear way for you to go, okay, let's move the story along. It's clear, subtle, because not everyone wants to have to stand up and say, I feel awkward about this whole situation. I mean, personally, I think we should feel fine to be able to say, yeah, I'm not feeling great in this moment, guys. Can we hurry it up? But that's not everyone. So just having a few options and making your players aware of those options is always good. One of our friends in one of our D&D groups, who was also a DM, had a really good way to end up doing this, which was to actually have a little printout of all possible ways for them to communicate to the DM about whether they're enjoying a moment or if they are not having a good time without making it super obvious, which is chef's kiss beautiful. So as a bonus tip, printouts, leaflets, stuff like that. Throwing that into your game, always really nice, and it's just a little bow on having a fun experience. And the other situation which can come up is the case that they aren't having a good time and they need to leave. As in, they're fine with the story going on, but maybe they want to get out of it. And this is super underrated, which is the open door policy. Allow your players to leave the table and feel fine about it. That's okay. Sometimes people are going to have stuff come up and they need to be allowed to leave the table without anyone judging them for it. Don't make it a big fuss. Don't be like, oh, well, I can't end up continuing the story without you, because maybe they're wanting to not be there for the story. That's okay. If they do not want to have to experience this moment of the story, but are fine with you continuing telling it to the rest of the party, let your players go and have a minute. Maybe they just need to step outside. Maybe they need to get some air. Maybe they need to make a call. Maybe they've been informed about some family stuff going on at home, and they just need a minute to not break the immersion and everything. Like, they need to get away from it, but they don't want everyone else to be wrapped up in everything. And so just having an open door policy of allowing our players to just sometimes stand up and walk away is perfectly fine. As long as they come back eventually, that's okay. And, you know, if they come back and they say, hey guys, something's come up, I need to go, fair enough. Talk with them, send them a couple of messages afterwards, make sure that they're all okay. That's all real life stuff, so let's keep things to the table currently in this video. Be good to your friends. And finally, let's go over everything just so you as a games master have everything in your back pocket and so you are prepared for the next session. Now, starting things off, establish these boundaries. Talk with your players before your session begins and just establish, hey, I've ended up thinking about it. Let's end up covering these subjects very quickly. Let's get your thoughts and opinions on everything, write it all down, and then start your session. Do not try and implement these rules in the middle of your session, because if you're in the middle of combat and someone gets their arm chopped off, yeah, it'd be good to already know beforehand what you're meant to do to handle the situation calmly, collectedly, for your players' sake, instead of just saying, oh, did I go a little bit too far? Then make sure to lead by example. If your player turns around and says, hey, I'm not okay with this subject matter, accept it, move on, and avoid that subject matter. They have made it clear that they are not okay with it, and even if you had a storyline around that, doesn't matter. They're not going to have a good time, which means you're not going to have a good time, so it's just easier to accept that and plot around it. Come up with something else, come up with a new storyline or plot line, or talk with them. It's okay. Also, make sure to revisit these boundaries from time to time. I'm not saying every single session you need to end up doing this, but it's good to occasionally do check-ins with your players, see how they're going, see how they're handling the story, and see if anything new's come up. Humans are ever changing all of the time. We end up having different thoughts, fears, phobias, all of that stuff just comes up sometimes. And so it's really good to just occasionally check in with your players, and maybe they'll be able to tell you, hey, this was really good. I really liked how you ended up handling this situation. Or I feel like you could have ended up handling this bit a little bit better. Like, don't feel bad about it. You are not perfect. No one in the world is perfect. So it's okay to make mistakes. It's just that so long as we are trying to learn from those mistakes, that people will be completely fine with it. And it shows, if anything, that you are a brilliant DM because you are able to admit that you have faults, but you wish to make them better. And finally, keep the check-ins short. Just give everyone, hey guys, quick vibe check. How we doing? How's it all hanging? Everyone having a good time? Everyone gives thumbs up? Great, wonderful, moving on. You don't have to have the check-ins go on for ages. You don't need a whole sit down or anything. It can be, but maybe keep that for outside of the session. But occasionally in the middle of your session, it's good to just be like, hey, that was kind of heavy. Is everyone doing okay? It's nice. Because at the end of the day, we have to remember that we're all here to have fun. So it's important that we make everyone's level of comfort the number one priority, and then the story comes second. Yes, we're playing a game, but at the end of the day, we're all choosing to play this game. We're all choosing to have fun. And if we're not having fun, then why are we here? And that's what we're trying to avoid as game masters. So do keep in mind that at the end of the day, safety tools don't kill immersion. If anything, they help really create it, because when your players are feeling comfortable, they're feeling happy, they know the boundaries, and they are set and good to go, oh boy, they're able to go balls to the walls in terms of creativity. They suddenly know, hey, I know I shouldn't do this. Okay, I'll just do this instead. No one had a problem with that. If someone does have a problem with that, then that's probably a discussion for another day. But, that's okay. Like, it really helps people come to life and have a lot of fun because they know what they can do and how creative they can be. And so they will have a much, much nicer time thriving off of the chaos and just reveling in the freedom to know, I can do this. This is all okay. This is all good. Let's have some fun. But those are safety tools in D&D. Our games, our stories, TTRPGs in general, it's beautiful. There's so much fun creativeness that can come up from these sessions and everything. But the hard part is that we don't know everyone's story. We don't know what everyone has been through, and we don't know what they are going to enjoy and what they're going to hate. So it's always important to make sure to check in with your players and figure out what do they like and what don't they like. Once we know that, we're able to end up making sure that the story is fit perfectly for them. And when the story is perfectly fit for our players, then they can be absolutely incredible storytellers. So, yeah. Either way, I hope you ended up liking this thing. If you did, please could you end up hitting that like button? I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you like this stuff and you want to see more of this, maybe end up hitting that subscribe button, I'll give you more fun videos. I'll end up giving you some fun tips. If you do, I'd greatly appreciate it, my friends. Now, aside from that, only final things. If you end up having ideas, if you have concept that you end up wanting me to end up talking about in the future, please do write it down in the comments section, because I do read every single comment on every single one of my videos currently. It's fun. I love talking with you guys. It's really cool to end up just hearing about some crazy characters and everything. Shout out to the Lord of Cheese the other day talking about their cleric friends, garlic bread companions. It's great. And also, again, if you are subscribed, ring that notification bell if you can, just so that way then you can end up keeping up to date with everything. And I hope you're having a great one, my friends. I hope you're having good games, and I hope that you have ended up learning just that little bit extra. In the meantime, I hope you have a good one. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.